Good evening. Goof that up. Good evening, everybody. It's John with WoW Support. We've got an awesome show scheduled for us tonight. We've got our flight engineer. We're going to start with him this time because he's the glue that holds us together on this flight. Artie, say hi.
Welcome in, everybody.
And then we've also got Mike.
Hey, everybody. Good to be back.
We've got Jackson
Glad to always be here.
and two guests from Adam Networks, Stan.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here for the first time. Looking forward to it.
And also got Steve with us too. So go ahead.
Yeah, greetings, y'all. Thanks for the invite, John. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you guys with us. It's kind of an exciting time. We're kind of moving into that next phase of we got our legs underneath us on this podcast. As you saw the title, it's eight is not enough. We will be doing more of these, for better or worse. Take it as you will. You've been warned. How about that? Yeah, we're excited to bring Adam Network to the table and kind of talk through what the product is. Stan, you just got back from England, right?
We did, yeah. Steve and I had the pleasure and privilege of being at InfoSec Europe, which is one of the largest security orientated, I guess, conferences you could say that happens in London, UK every single year. So that was it was a blast. We had a really good time, and we're down there with additional partners, and it would it went really really well.
Awesome, Steve. I hope you agree with Stan there.
Yeah, no, it was a fantastic event. Lots of education and really a good way to keep a pulse on what the rest of the industry is doing and how they're approaching the unique problems of internet security and some of the creative solutions and marketing campaigns that they've come up with for their various products. But I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later on in the podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm actually real excited to hear that. So we've got we're going to spend some time talking about the InfoSec and what you ran into out there and kind of what the industry's doing. We definitely want to spend some time on the firewall, but Stan, you actually corrected me as we were getting ready for this. It's not a firewall. What is it?
It's not a firewall. So Adam Networks is actually a technology company. So while the implementation of Adam is what we would say is on an edge device or a firewall, really the deployment model is either on a container or on bare metal or anything else like that, that can take it. Normally, John, you folks would know, like we would run, pretty much on like a PFSense system or on top of like a iOS system or other like that. But really, Atom Network supplies what we consider a secure gateway for any type of egress traffic that leaves the network, in a very unique way, a way that I would say really, really, truly is unique. So we'll probably get into it, but the way that we look at it is, just trying to keep up with the bad is just not going to work. So we took a bit of a different first principles look at it and said, why don't we look at curating the internet for companies for what's good, rather than simply trying to keep up with the bad, which is pretty much an impossibility. Yeah.
And so you've got a technology, if I can paraphrase it, you filter traffic on the outbound, not the inbound.
Yeah, not the inbound. Any of us, and Steve can talk to this too, like we're really a defense in depth company. Things are the way they are these days, that there isn't any type of one size fits all solution that's going to cover everything. Most people, if you're running on the enterprise side of networks, you're looking at like, if you can get an IDS IPS system in place for ingress, then do it, right? Anything that can take, an endpoint software, you should probably be doing it. It and that really comes down to, what if you look at the way that egress traffic is handled largely by, I'd say most of the space out there, it's some type of a block listing, whether it's a live intelligence feed that's coming in that is really saying, look, like this particular location is bad, let's block it. And as you guys have probably heard us say before, like Known bad is pretty easy. If it's known bad, we just don't go there. Known good is also pretty easy. If it's a well curated site, that's something that can be easily put into like a nice little allow list, and it's good to go. The really big problem out there is what's happening with the unknowns. Like, what are people doing with the unknown space? Which, let's face it, the internet is the biggest unknown space, that we have when it comes to the amount of domains that are out there. So, what are you doing on, what are you doing on the unknowns? Are you, most from what we've seen is that they'll do a fail open policy on the unknown. They don't want to impact the business. They don't want to cause problems. They don't want users getting upset that they can't get to every single resource that they think they're entitled to. And so they just do a fail open. In other words, if they don't have the intelligence on a site that they're going to, they're just going to let you go there. And the unfortunate
So like
part,
if
yeah,
you're
sorry, go ahead. Mhm.
so if you've got like a law office or something like that, you've got your paralegal is waiting between cases and just surfing the internet for
Yeah.
news articles or what have you. Not necessarily on topic. They're surfing around. Um, you're saying fail open is they can go anywhere they click, right?
They can, yeah, they can go pretty much go anywhere they want. I mean, that people can lock down things via policies on that for the type of content that they're allowed to get to on corporate networks pretty well. There's a lot of good technologies out there that allow that. I I'd say the bigger issue becomes like, you know, people's day to day, right? Like we're big, do a security awareness training. Like, people have to know the pitfalls of things that are out there. It's that you just, you know, you have to be able to train your staff in such a way to go, okay, this could be dangerous. Make sure you're looking at this, and don't, if at all possible, try not to click on these, a possibly malicious link. But to look at it and go, okay, well, you're never allowed downloading an attachment again. You're never allowed clicking on a link again. Well, businesses, that you're done, right? Everyone's got an accounting department. That's what they do. They have to. That's how people. That's how money is generated. And so, invariably, especially with the advent of generative AI, just some of the things that are out there now, it's becoming harder and harder for even security experts to see every single fish. And you'll hear probably most of the ones in the industry said they'll end up getting fished. It's going to get good enough that nobody's going to be able to tell the difference. And at that point, what do? Right? If you're in a fail open policy at that point, then any link that comes through an email is a potential problem. And unfortunately, in order to not impact the business, they have to take a fail open approach because they don't have another way of handling it. And this is why phishing is such a problem.
I can imagine that some organizations have a fail closed policy with a barrage of people sitting behind computers clicking allow on websites. But if you've got a purchasing team,
Hmm.
they're going to go find the best price possible. They need to surf the web.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could imagine slowing that down is not a good idea for business.
No. The other thing too is, like, what about R&D teams? Right?
Mhm.
What about teams whose whole job is to scour the internet for different things? Well, you can take certain protections in place, but how are you going to be able to curate the internet for them without impacting the rest of the business? And that becomes again a problem, right?
Yep.
And so, one of the mechanisms that Adam uses is the ability to go, okay, we can go down to like a per device policy or per user policy, which means you can effectively microsegment the network without actually microsegmenting the network, because you can go down to a per device or per user policy, which means people that actually need to get to things that maybe are outside the realm of the day to day have the ability to do it without impacting the rest of the users. And you can control, what the accounting department, you know, they're protected in a manner that doesn't impact their business.
Well, that's phenomenal technology.
Mhm.
Steve, you've been helping us put it in at our office. Um, Thank you for that, by the way. It's been wonderful working with you and
My
seeing
pleasure.
how it's customized. Um, what would you say is a typical rollout time frame for a medium-sized company, like 20, 30 people?
Anywhere from a few hours to a few weeks, depending on how well architected that network is. In order for Adam to do its job properly, it has to be installed on a network that's configured properly to best standard practices. One of the analogies we use, I don't think I've shared this, you guys may appreciate that, is we use the impression of a paddock, of a farmyard, right? Adam 1 is the gate. Okay. And right now, all of your livestock, all of your information, all of your livelihood is just streaming through your gate because you're failing open. So basically, you didn't lock the gate. It's wide open. Everything is escaping. What Adam does is we're going to come in, we're going to slam that gate closed, and we're going to put the best darn farm gate you've ever seen on your paddock. The second we do that, we're going to find the holes in your fence. And there's going to be more than a few of them. And we've done installations where we've slammed the gate closed only to find out that somewhere down the road, there's a completely separate egress point that nobody knew about because some technician that worked before the technician that's working on the network now installed an LTE backup. So we shut the door on the fiber connection. We're monitoring egress traffic and everything is all well and good, except for that entire segment of the network that's leaking out through an LTE connection that nobody knew was actually there. Right? Networks are an organic thing and they grow seemingly on their own with no human interaction. And it's kind of terrifying. But if it's a well architected network and the system administrator understands his network and he understands his traffic flow and he understands all the elements of his network, much like your network, the only complication with yours is it's large, right? But it's well architected, right? It's well designed. You guys have a fundamental understanding of how everything is supposed to flow. That's a fairly straightforward installation, right? Adam 1, we've had up running on networks in several hours, right? For the basic protection, the user education and understanding how to shape policies can generally take several weeks to fully implement. But it varies with the network.
So it's a fantastic time for a tech team to not just put in new firewall technology, or I should say an augmentation to their firewall technology, but also take an audit of their security posture overall.
Yeah, like when we deal with a client directly, we come up with a list of network prerequisites, and here's some things that you're going to want to consider about your network before you go through the trouble of installing our security solution, right? Rogue access points just being one of them, alternate internet. You wouldn't think you could accidentally have another internet connection to your network. You wouldn't think that's something you would do, but it happens, right? You can swear up and down that you have no other routing devices natting traffic on your network, but you forget about the wireless D-Link that somebody picked up at Staples and installed in the accounting office to give wireless to their phones because their signal was weak, right? Shadow IT software. We're going to find all of that the second we turn the Adam device on. It's all going to become clear. So we have a list of best practices that you can go through to help get your network up to standard. But as long as you've got a good understanding of how your network functions, the installation is going to be, from a technical point of view, very smooth.
Gosh, what a 2-for-1 special that is. Not only lock it down, but you get to lock it down.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, I don't want to steal all the questions here, guys. Definitely want to give Jackson and Mike and Artie a chance.
Yeah, I've got one. As
Shoot.
I'm certainly the least informed and least educated on networks. I know my basics and I know my yeah, we'll leave it at that. I know my basics. So for me, tell me a little bit more about how Adam 1 is able to lock down a system that's been infected. How does it detect that, and how does it know to keep traffic? How does it know to quarantine a device?
It doesn't specifically know to quarantine that device. By default, it quarantines all devices. No device is allowed to communicate off the network until it's been completely identified. Not only the device itself has been identified, but where that device is trying to go has been identified. We don't necessarily care what's on the device. We care, where is that device trying to reach out to? And is that somewhere that it's supposed to reach out to? So let me piggyback on Stan's phishing example from earlier, because this is one of my favorites. John, you mentioned the law firm and somebody surfing the internet, right? Puts their email address on an online shopping site of questionable repute and gets some advertisements in their inbox. And for odd reasons, one of them is asking to verify a login. Coupon site, great choice.
Yeah.
That phishing link is going to come into their email account, and they're going to click on it. I don't care what kind of security awareness training they've had. They're going to click on the link. Now, what Adam does immediately is it looks at the device. It says, do I know the device where this request is coming from? Yes. Great. What policy is it in? Okay, great. Is that link that she clicked on or he clicked on, is that an allowed website for that user to get to? The answer is no. So they're not allowed to even connect. That site won't even open. They get the Adam 1 block page that says the website you're trying to reach is not found in any active whitelist. You simply can't go there. And that Stan's point about how failing closed was the question that we answered differently that made this whole thing work. Because every other solution out there can do an allow list or a block list. That's nothing new. But what happens when she clicks on that list and the computer reaches out and says, what do we know about this URL? And the answer comes back, nothing. What do we do? The decision has to be made at that point. Do we disrupt the user by securing the network, or do we take a chance and allow it to go through and rely on the security awareness training? Well, everybody else is going to allow that domain to resolve and allow her to get to that password box. And I promise you, the password's getting entered into the box every time. With Adam, we look at that unknown request and say, you know what? We know it's disruptive, but so is the ransomware virus that's about to be downloaded. So we're going to go ahead and block that until such a time as it can be investigated fully. So that phishing attack vector disappears. It's gone. So is the computer still infected? Absolutely. Does it have to be looked at by IT? Absolutely. Is there a risk that that data is going to be exfiltrated from the network, or some malicious piece of code is going to be downloaded that's going to lock up the entire network? Not a chance. And that's how we look at it. We care about where's the packet coming from, where is it going to, and that's it.
So it's not a zero attack surface, but you reduced it down to the size of a keyhole.
As small as we can possibly make it.
Yeah.
Because zero attack surface is an impossibility, because the way I look at security, it's on a spectrum between convenience on one end and secure on the other. It's entirely possible to create a computer network or computer system that's completely impenetrable to attack and assault. Nobody would ever be able to use it. That's a problem. On the other hand, it's entirely possible to make the world's easiest computer system to use. No passwords, no encryption, no security, no nothing. You've got to find yourself somewhere on that spectrum, right? Where's your balance between usability and convenience and inconvenience and security? And we went the other way. We swam against the stream and we went to, it's okay to disrupt the user from time to time if we can guarantee the data is never exfiltrated from the network.
So how does the tech administrator there, how do they deal with the frustrated paralegal that can't get to their coupon site? What's
Diplomatically.
the interaction, and how do they get to the coupon site or the retail place that they're trying to go that is potentially legit?
Potentially legit. It's on the tech individual. And having been in tech support, I realized this is particularly challenging to educate the end user, only because nothing against the end user, but something against tech people. We're not usually people friendly. We don't usually integrate with larger society very well. You guys are laughing, but you all know I'm serious and I'm right. Right? We don't integrate well. So it's a matter of going to that user and saying, listen, let's look at what happened here. You got an email from a coupon site that's asking you to log into a website that you've never been to before. That's not a good idea. Let me show you what can happen, right? It's all about education, which is why Stan said, as much as I do admittedly poke fun at security awareness training, it is critically important, because if it's been done, you can go to that user and say, hey, remember last April when that dude came over here and told us about phishing links and how it works and things like that? This is protecting you against a mistake like that could devastate our company. And call it what it is. And I don't, in my experience, nobody's ever had a problem with that. They're grateful once they've realized that they made a mistake, but the technology was there to protect them from the consequences of that mistake. Now, if it's a legitimate work project they're trying to complete and their boss has a problem with it, that's an even more difficult conversation. But it's one that
went from a $1.5 million mistake to a 10 minutes of frustration mistake.
Exactly right.
Exactly.
Which is why when they say to us, well, our users will be disrupted, we can't do that. Disrupt your users, my friend. Please disrupt them for 10 minutes, or that ransomware virus is going to disrupt your life.
So, Stan, I already know the answer to this question. And it's one of those things that I've learned is don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. In interviews, or at least you know where the question's going to go.
You're like a good lawyer.
If you're trying to get to a website that you know is clear, it's legit, it's brand new, your friend just started it, I'm sure it's not hacked, but it's not letting me through because it's not on the allow list. What option does Adam use to give me access to my friend's website?
Yeah, so there's a couple of pretty straightforward ones, and I mean, you guys have seen the dashboard enough times. Couple different ways. One is, you know what, grab the website, drop it into an allow list, and away you go. If it's an end user that wants to actually process that that the admins have enabled to process an unblock request, one of the things that we'll do is we've got a secondary AI that would kick in. It'll take about 15 to 20 seconds, but it'll scan that whole site, it'll sandbox, it'll do everything. That'll come back. The AI within the Atom system will then go, okay, what's the results of this? And then compare it to, other threat intelligence feeds that we bring in. If it's still completely unknown, it's going to do exactly what Steve says. It's going to still come back and go, I'm sorry, this needs to go to an administrator. And at that point, they'll get a notification. There's a beautiful little unblock area within the dashboard. They can go in, drop an item down, and then put it into a dynamic allow list. And then it's there. Now, one thing I do want to point out though is that's not quite the end of the story, because just because it's in there doesn't mean that, well, it's in this allow list and that's it. It's just a completely trusted source for the rest of its days. We take a bit more of a pragmatic approach because, you know your friend might be very good at security, but that doesn't mean that, if he's using WordPress. I mean, vulnerability and WordPress almost go hand in hand these days. Like, you know, it's I don't know. It's just old news. It's like everyone's just like, oh yeah, WordPress has got another one. Oh well. And I'm not just picking on WordPress, but it's just a fact of life that coding is, these programs are built by humans, and we're fallible, and there's going to be problems. So how do we know that your friend's website is going to stay safe forever? Well, we don't. So once it's in that allow list, what'll happen is that after 5 minutes, if you've gone off the site and you go to it the next day, usually the time to live that we put on those records is about 5 minutes. When you go to that website, Adam is going to take a look at that and go, okay, that's in the allow list, so it's going to exit its rules area, but it's going to go, oh wait a second, the time to live has expired for that site. So as a last check, I'm going to take a look at aggregated threat intelligence just to make sure that nothing has changed on that particular site. So I'm going to go and say, okay, how about Quad 9, Cloudflare, clean browsing, and others? That it's going to be like, well, has anything changed? Has anything happened? Is there updated intelligence? And if there is, if it's bad, guess what? You're not going to get to go there because now it's changed, right? If it doesn't find anything, it's going to go, okay, you can go there. You're on the allow list. So,
So if
sorry to
it's
interrupt.
if it's
Is
a
there a bunch of
trusted
background noise coming through, guys? No, is there no background
party,
noise? Okay, good.
I'm
Perfect.
not hearing anything.
Okay.
awesome.
Sorry, guys. Good.
You have a
Perfect.
Well,
comment,
Yeah.
so
So
your security is based around you only allow it if it is verified trusted.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, even in the dynamic allow listing side of it, unless you've got, like, we always, Steve can tell you, you want to put your internal resources into a correct list. So those are always trusted. External ones, though, even if it's an allow list, that is still going to get checked. Like, that's still always going to. That's why we lower the time to live for these records down to 5 minutes, because we want to. You're never going to be 100%, but let's again shrink that window down to what we figure is going to be possible to give you the lowest type of risk factor that we can possibly give you. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Mike, I heard you pipe up just a little bit.
For the guy who is looking to get into this, he's got either a small business that he's running, or maybe it's even a home network. Because I know you guys have done home networks as well with this. Where does this fit in the network topology? Is this replacing something? Is it working with something? What am I able to get rid of by putting this in, or do I still need to keep a hold of other technologies and things that are keeping me secure? How does that fit in?
Good, Steve.
Again, yeah, sorry. Again, depending on the topology of the network. So let's use my home network as an example. AdamNetworks functions as my edge gateway, right? It functions as my firewall. It receives a signal from the Starlink router and handles all of the internal functions on my network, DHCP, all that kind of stuff. And it is the only protection that's run on my network, and I'm confident that it's going to work. Right? I consider myself a careful internet user, though, right? Usually well educated in things that can go sideways. But again,
You don't
it's
coupon, sir?
entirely up to the user. I'm not really big into coupons. Coupons aren't really the thing in Canada. We notice we go down to the States a lot that coupons are a much bigger thing down there. Up here, our system of oligarchies don't really use couponing. It goes against the notion of price fixing and collusion. They're not big on it. But down in the States, where you guys have actually what resembles a free market economy, couponing is huge, and it's a huge attack vector. I don't mean to put that down at all, but it's a different system. But again, it depends, what kind of hardware to deploy it on. But in a home network or small business network, it simply replaces your existing firewall edge appliance, which in most small businesses was provided by the ISP, at least in Canada. And in the US, I believe probably quite simpler. Comcast, Verizon,
That,
I don't know who all
yeah,
your
that
big
tends to
providers
be
are,
our
Spectrum.
experience as well. Yeah.
That's what you're going to find, right? Well, my cable company brought me my modem. It has a router. It gives me Wi-Fi. That's all I need. They tell me there's security on it. They charge me $15 a month for it on top of my internet service. Great. Keep it if you want. But when I ran an MSP before my Adam days, it was always, that's fantastic. Let's get you your own router. Right? For a home user, install it on an Asus device. You've got Wi-Fi. We support that platform with Merlin firmware. And do that, right? For the small business owner. That was a big part of my MSP business, was getting them off of that. Right? And then as far as endpoint security, it's still a great idea. Right? Antivirus is still a fantastic idea, right? Watch out for the free ones. I think that might come up in the podcast later on. And I may get roasted for this one, but at least as far as Windows 10 went, Defender was fantastic. I mean, it's all you need. Windows Defender and Atom 1, I mean, you're good to go. You're in good shape.
I do have to give Microsoft a little credit on their Defender product. It is not the end all be all, but it is way, way better than it was in the Windows 7 days.
Yeah, absolutely. And a
Much.
lot of people, well, it's certainly better than any other free, and anybody listening to audio, those are air quotes around free, free antivirus software solution out there. I used to tell clients, if you're going to pay for an antivirus solution, there are some really good ones. But if you just want to use a free one, don't download anything else. Turn on Windows Defender in Windows 10 only. It wasn't that great in 7, but Windows 10, it really stepped up a lot, and just run Defender.
One of the things we learned recently, Huntress Labs, they recommend Windows Defender.
It's
their product
surprising
is
how
what
many
they're
of those
supporting.
software reviews and best defenders, I mean, take them with a grain of salt. They're tested market products from time to time, but in actual real tests, Windows Defender scores generally quite well.
Mhm.
Quite well. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's written by the company that wrote the OS, so it has a
Yeah.
better chance of knowing how it works.
Yeah.
I'm not saying perfect knowledge. I'm saying better chance.
Yeah.
So, Mike, did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, the way I see it is if I was the guy on the street that wanted to get into this, especially for like my home network, I think looking at cost, what am I replacing? What do I still have to keep? And if I'm looking to cut something out to replace with that, that certainly seems far better than having to say, well, you can get, because sometimes we get into other products where it's like, well, you still need to keep this and you still need to keep that as a safeguard, as a backup, as a security. But I'm really encouraged by what you say. When I can replace my existing firewall router, it's going to handle, and it runs on the ASUS platform. That's great too. I've done ASUS before in my days in my former employer. We used ASUS routers, and they were very easy to use. And the idea that I could actually just get a plugin or another application to put on that device rather than having to replace the entire device, that's very encouraging.
Yep.
Well, the Atom software runs on ASUS, right?
Yep.
It
There's
does,
a.
yeah. Go ahead, Stan.
Oh, I was gonna say there's a list of supported I guess ASUS platforms that we have, like the actual routers themselves. And there's, I mean, on the support forums, there's a whole mechanism in there for how to, it's a really easy. It's actually, if you're even remotely technically inclined, it's pretty straightforward to get the system on there for what you need to get on there. And there's a full
Yeah.
walkthrough for what those home users, would need on there. But it's, yeah, I mean, my setup is really no different than Steve's, other than the fact that, we got fiber coming to the home, and right after that, that's where my Atom sits. Is
Yep.
is at that particular edge. It's the exact same thing. So, for most homes and most small businesses, it's probably going to be somewhat similar. It's really at that network edge point.
Yep.
Well, and one of the things, it's rare that we talk about the security posture we take, but we are extending the Atom network. We're putting appliances in at all of our teams' home locations, just because we feel um, uh, any vulnerability is too much. And if we can rope off our office, that's great. If somebody's working at home on their laptop and their laptop gets infected, they VPN in. That's an entry point and potentially an exit point as well.
Yep.
So we're
Exactly right.
giving it to the home offices. We're also extending um, Atom firewall protect, not firewall, Atom software protection to our team members' homes, so they can keep their family safe too. We feel
Yeah.
strongly about that.
That's really, I mean, you kind of hit it on it there, John. Steve's been with the company longer than I have, but that's really been the birthplace of Atom. Is, our, one of our main vision points is, we protect people, and it starts with the people that we love and care about, right? And that was really, that's really where it was. David came up with the whole concept after, running into a problem with one of, you know a search gone wrong that he was sitting there doing with his son. And when his son was 9 years old, and just went, "There's got to be a better way for me to protect my family." And they looked. I mean, they spent a lot of time looking at different technologies, and David's been in the tech space for well over 20 years, and there was just nothing. And so he's like, "Nope, you know what? Then this is what we're going to do, and we're going to build something from first principles, and we're gonna protect the people that we care about, and protect the systems that we care about." So
Yeah,
that's really the mission and goal for Out of Networks.
that's awesome. Well, we definitely want to help you do that. Well, let's we're about 25 minutes from the end, so past the halfway point, I think. I don't want to. Well, I do want to talk the whole hour on out of network. But if one of our viewers was interested in getting out of network, what would they do?
Contact you guys.
That's the way.
Yep.
Correct answer.
Well,
Contact
and
you
that's
guys. You guys
go
are
ahead.
one of our very valued licensed technology partners. So I mean, if you're in any type of area, you're listening to the podcast, you know what? John and team are the guys you're going to get a hold of. You want to do some research, you can happily head over to Adam Networks. Do a search for Adam Networks, adamnetworks.com.ca. You'll be able to get onto our site to get more information. But that would be first and foremost. But you know what? Like, yeah, reach out to the wonderful guys at WIO Support. Like, that's one of the reasons why Steve and I are here. We want to support you guys.
That's right.
Really appreciate that. We've got it on our website, yosupport.com. Search around, you can find our number there. Um, it's such a wonderful opportunity to be aligned with somebody that has that vision of people first, not money first.
Yeah.
We feel strongly that it's people that make this world special, not money.
It
So
100%.
we're gonna do what we can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's people, not the technology either. I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's a mantra that Francois, our COO, uses all the time. Is we want technology to serve people, not to have people serve technology. And that's a really, really important distinction, especially in this day and age.
It might be the battle cry we've got to use against the artificial general intelligence that's upcoming.
Yeah, highly likely, highly likely. I mean, not that it's off topic, but along those lines, like certainly having technology serve people. It's kind of ironic that a lot of school districts are now going to banning devices, and suddenly they're realizing that, wait a second, I've got less behavioral problems with kids in the classroom, and kids are paying more attention, and suddenly they're more interactive and they're learning better. And it's like, well, yeah, because now you know the tech is being probably properly used in the classroom, and the distractions are put away. And that's really how we view how Adam Networks fits into this, is to go, what, if you're a business, or whether it's you're an enterprise, whether you're home business, whether you're homeschool is another big thing that we support.
Mm.
um, have the technology serve you, rather than you having to serve the technology and being you know held sort of really being held enslaved by what's going to happen when I sit down and start typing in a search. What are my kids going to get exposed to at ages that they're way too young to be exposed, just because they made a spelling mistake. So it's those types of things that we have a really, really strong passion for.
Hmm. Well, we are here to help spread the good word and
Hmm.
get it out there so we can make this world a better place.
Awesome.
Any last questions, guys?
I'm
Nope,
good.
I'm excited.
Me too.
Trying to remember it.
Nice.
Well,
Thanks, Freddie. Thanks,
the
guys.
Oh, I got it.
yep.
So you had mentioned that the question is, if a site that was whitelisted, that was on one of these trusted lists, becomes like it falls into somebody else's hands,
Hmm.
how quickly does the software pick up on changes like that?
So one of the technologies within the Atom suite is called DNS Harmony. So what DNS Harmony allows you to do is to set um, numerous threat intelligence feeds that are aggregated. So in other words, instead of just having to, okay, what's the best threat intelligence feed? Well, the best threat intelligence feed is aggregating 4, 5, 6, 7 feeds into one, because now you're getting multiple intelligence streams coming through. So let's say in my DNS Harmony, I'm using clean browsing, 111 for malware, Quad 9, and AdGuard. Okay, so I've got those 4 threat feeds as essentially my DNS resolvers. If any one of those sites gets an updated intelligence that the site has gone bad, or something's been reported on there, that's when it's going to get pulled off the list, and it's going to get blocked.
Okay.
So how fast we can get to it is how fast that intelligence is updated. And this is another reason why we close the time to live window for that particular domain down to 5 minutes by default. Because for us to be able to check that, the user doesn't even know it's happening, by the way. It's not like they go to the site after 5 minutes and now they're sitting there waiting for the site to process for 30 seconds, 40 seconds. It happens in user space. It'll happen within milliseconds, and they don't even notice that it's happening. It's happening in the background. And so those intelligence calls will happen essentially every 5 minutes when somebody goes back to that particular site. So it is dependent upon those particular feeds coming through, but as soon as that's maybe as a comparison, I think most competitors, they'll keep those records in a block list without checking them for anywhere from 24 hours to a week or longer. So now you've opened a window for something potentially to have gone bad for a much longer time frame without doing any checks and balance whatsoever. So hopefully, Artie, has answer the question there?
Yeah, that does. That very enlightening too.
Hmm.
It is a shockingly uh, adept system at grabbing onto um, what is good and filtering out what could have gone stale since last time it looked at.
Yeah. And Steve talks about the disruption to the user, and it's not like on the implementation, it's not like your users are going to be getting block pages every 3 seconds that they're trying to go to someplace. Most of the time, with the way the AI categorization functions, it's it's very low. We're not going to ever say zero, because why would you say zero? You want the user to get disrupted, right? Our goal is to disrupt the user, disrupt that chain before something bad happens. And if you take a look at the vast majority of attack patterns out there, it's usually something that's going to an unknown location. It's not, it. People always say, well, what happens if a top level domain, a trusted domain, becomes infected? And it's like, well, if Amazon.com starts feeding malware, or Microsoft.com starts feeding malware, there's bigger problems. This isn't like, like, these are big problems, rather than some unknown, linked subdomain, which, you know we're going to block, that nobody probably should be going to in the first place. So, is there disruption to the user? Yeah, there's disruption to the user, but not to the point where they're going to be really frustrated, and they can't get their jobs done.
So
So hopefully
really,
that's a
if I
clarification.
could paraphrase that, it's those users that are going outside of their day-to-day routine that are going to bang into the walls and need
Yes.
some
Yeah.
additional scanning or stuff.
Yeah.
So in that sense, when we're installing it, when you are installing, you're really working with the customer to figure out what is the day-to-day workflow and streamlining it so that so they don't run into the guardrails.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, you dial up the protection as you're implementing the solution, right? When you start off with a fairly permissive policy, I think John, you and I talked about this off camera earlier today.
Mhm.
If starting with a fairly open policy, if your user is frustrated because they ran into a block page on that policy, there's an argument to be made that that website or URL should not have been visited from a work computer during work hours. I mean, the policy is that permissive, right? And then from there should be zero disruption on there that anybody's going to have a problem with. And then from there, you can, as Stan likes to say, tighten the screws on the policy and ratchet it up to an acceptable level of protection. But it's possible to implement the solution, get the majority of the protection that is offered without disrupting the users unnecessarily, or in a way that they shouldn't expect to be disrupted, if you know what I mean. But then dial that up as you need to get to the posture that you want to get to.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So I'll say, if anybody that's watching this has any questions on this, we're here to help. Adam is here to help. I should say Stan and Steve and the entire team over there at Adam Networks. Give us all a call. We're definitely interested in helping you out.
Absolutely.
Definitely want to move on to next couple things. We don't know how much time we got left, but I do want to get your guys' take on the Adobe debacle that's going on. I don't know. Are you guys up to speed on that?
That one I
Only
may
what
need
you
to.
mentioned to me the other
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. So Adobe has. Artie, do you have the article up at all?
I don't have it up, no. But I
All right. So
could
I'm going to paraphrase it real
do it.
quick while you
As Steve says, give us the TLDR.
Yeah, I guess we're at that time frame of the day. So Adobe changed the terms of service to say, oh, everything that you've had in your Creative Cloud, we're going to use to train our AI. All the users said, no, you're not.
Hmm.
And so Adobe kind of backpedaled and said, okay, we might in the future. We haven't yet. And then people are still kind of not happy about having their terms of service changed midstream. There's a lot of cancellations going right now. But the lawsuit that's been filed is specific to the early termination fees. So Adobe got caught
Hmm.
charging people a monthly subscription and saying early termination fees may apply, and that's it in the entire sign-up process. As people went to cancel, they found very punitive cancel fees, hundreds of dollars potentially. And they found out that they were locked into a 12-month agreement, and that was the first exposure they had to it. So the U.S. Department of Everything has decided that this is worth pursuing. So they filed suit against Adobe for deceptive practices. It's kind of a good thing. I think it
Yeah.
was the Federal Trade Commission
Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of the long of the short. Um, but I wanna put it up there. I mean, just the truth of Adobe doing what it wants and then uh, taking the consumer for a ride.
They're
Oh,
not the first,
It
they're not
wouldn't
gonna
be
be
the
the last.
first.
mm-mm.
Yeah,
That
it
kind of
probably won't be the
reminds
last.
me with the AI. That reminds me. Microsoft has been doing that with GitHub actually for a while. Where anything that is up on GitHub that is being used to train their AI, and that's probably what what the AI anyone's been using has been trained on is GitHub repositories.
You, you know, Jackson, I it's unfortunate. I mean, I think we're seeing it that if anywhere where it's going to hit, it's going to be in the States because it's going to be probably easier for like class actions to be taken to go, I never consented to this. Or you look at the art community or the community, the creative arts community that are going, no, 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 no. This is my book, this is my essay, this is my intellectual property. I never gave you permission to use it, and we know full well that you know chat how much of the Library of Congress has been used to train AI? Probably all of it, right? And yet
Right.
these are intellectual pieces that are the blood, sweat, and tears of their creators. And so um, I think it's a good pushback because I think it's something where the terms of service stuff is like I said, that it's unfortunate that they try to put things in there, and I'm glad there's like rules and regulations that are protecting people that way. I mean, what was the other big exodus was WhatsApp decided that they're going to change their terms of service, and oh, we're going to sell your user data. And what happened? I mean, there was a you know Signal had to increase its server load by however many thousands of servers within one day because people just exited the WhatsApp platform and went over to Signal and went, "Well, I'm not going to deal with this. This is ludicrous." So yeah, we're in for some interesting times this way.
Yeah, and you just made me think of something, or at least think of it a little bit differently because I think a lot of people look at it from the end result, right? Using just ChatGPT as an example, right? They've been through it a lot, and they've said we'll stand behind whatever ChatGPT outputs, right? That it is our own, intellectual property, per se.
Yeah,
That may not be the language they use, which is in a sense true, right? It is made by the tool. It's not necessarily copy paste. But um, when you were just talking about that, it made me think of it. Companies, if you want to train your employees on something, you hire someone to come and share that information, right? Um, and that's where the problem is. That's where those creators are saying, "Hey, hold on,
yeah,
I didn't give you permission to use my content to train your employee or AI or uh, the AI on how to do its job."
yeah. No, 100%. Right. Like I went to school. It wasn't free for me.
Hmm.
I had to pay for my textbooks. I had to pay for my classes. I had to pay for all that. It wasn't, and the thing is, even in countries like in Europe, where if you're a citizen, the university's free, it's not really free. There's a lot of tax dollars that are going to pay for those programs. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's a pretty tough stance to take. Going, oh well, it's our intellectual property now that it's in an AI. It's like, well, hold on here a second. How far would your AI come? You know,
It makes me
Well, yeah,
wonder.
you get a
Makes me wonder
storyteller
how.
like, go ahead.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how they could actually maybe go around that with. When I was in school the first time around, I was in graphic design. I was doing graphic design. We learned all the Adobe products in our graphic design classes, Photoshop, Illustrator, you name it. That's what we learned. And I remember at the time that for a student to purchase an entire suite of all the Adobe products we were learning, if we were to pay the full retail price, there's no way. I mean, that's a semester's worth of money that I should be paying
Thousands.
to my tuition. Now I have to pay it for software. And so what do? You go to the school bookstore and you can get educational licensed software.
Mhm.
So that puts it kind of in an interesting position, Jackson, where the educational licensing technically prohibited me from doing any commercial work with
Mhm.
that software. Now, how are they going to know? It's possible they could have embedded some kind of identifier in the output files. But when it gets exported to a JPEG or something more generic, that might go away. I know the same is true for CAD programs for engineers and all sorts of different things. So in that sense, I couldn't use the educational license program. Then when I got out into the workforce, I'd either have to have my employer purchase for me or I would have to save up and purchase the full retail licensed for commercial use product. And
You're
now they
welcome.
go to now they go to a subscription model. You know,
Mhm.
years later, like I was ready to upgrade to Adobe CS Creative Suite 6, and then all of a sudden they went to subscription model, and it's like, I don't want to do that. Like, I like to buy it once and make it last for 12 years, you know, until the computer falls off the desk and everything.
Well,
I
that's the
wonder,
problem is they got the software going so good and strong
yeah,
that they're not going to sell you another piece because there's no features that you need. You've got it
yeah,
all.
yeah. And it makes me wonder if, like, with this AI training, will they do that with educational licensing? Like, maybe in the educational realm, it's like, hey, we're going to learn from these students. The students are learning, they're not making commercial products with it. We're going to learn, we're going to train our AI right alongside them and send the AI to school, so to speak. And there you go. And
You-
I know that that whole realm of educational versus commercial licensing actually bit a friend of mine in the butt one time because she did things in school, created a portfolio, but then published it to a website. And elements out of what she created were not licensed to be published on a website. And it bit her in the
Mm.
butt.
Mhm.
You know, and so you get into these copyright and licensing and terms of service and all that. And it takes a law office just to read through it every
Mhm.
time you sign up for new software, just to make sure, am I using it right? Am I okay? And what are they going to get out of it?
Yep.
Yep. No, absolutely.
You know, it's interesting that I mean that's an interesting thought. AI plagiarizing in academia.
Mm,
They've done it already.
I mean, that's
Uh,
kind of the model for AI. It doesn't generate anything
Yes.
new. It just regurgitates what it's been told. Um,
yeah,
Yep.
what
and
was
that
being
that's
discussed earlier, the New York Times, I believe, is currently suing OpenAI for plagiarism,
Yep.
and it's it's going to be a deciding factor in how AI gets treated. And I'm
Mhm.
glad that's happening soon. So
yeah,
It,
it's an interesting technology, interesting world.
yeah. If you want to
I
see if you want to see the creative side of AI, have ChatGPT do a biography of yourself, and you'll get it after about paragraph 3. It gets real creative.
you know I'm not going to worry about AI until it starts asking questions.
Oh.
Like we ask it questions and it comes up with theoretically brilliant answers and sometimes
Yep.
deceptively what do they call it? Confidently wrong answers.
Yeah.
Um, but when it starts asking questions, that's when we got to worry.
There you go.
Mhm.
Well, I think we're close, and I don't want to segue into something else with just a few minutes left. But I don't want to leave
Great.
on such a wonderful thought as that.
Should we celebrate about recall maybe?
Yeah, we can do
Oh,
that.
oh, there we go.
You mean
Yeah,
total
no,
recall?
it was total recall. Microsoft has just said that they're going to yank it out of everybody's hands, including the previews. You have to be an inside subscriber to get access to it. So, yay that. Um, I think it's just too revolutionary a technology for us to throw on the dumpster fire of a security posture Windows
Yeah.
has for us. We just
Yeah.
we just had a critical vulnerability in Wi-Fi that's been around since Windows, right?
Yep.
Well, I don't know. You gotta wonder about the conversation to go like, let's just have this thing take a screen grab like every, you know, point whatever of a second. And it's like, have you really thought about the entire ramifications of this? Is this really a good idea?
Well, I mean, the good news is Windows has never let a hacker get in to get sensitive information, right?
Oh,
I mean, could you imagine getting access to that backdooring access into the prompt and say, "Gosh, could you tell me all the private keys to my secure websites?"
they're all there in plain text.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Oh.
Hey,
I,
gosh, I forgot my
I'm
mother's maiden name. Could you tell me what it was?
yeah, I'm happy that I am really happy they walked back on it. I think that was ultimately a wise decision. So
Yeah,
we'll
I
celebrate
think
the wise decision.
when a company gets that large, they're going to put their foot in their mouth constantly. I'm glad they took the wisdom to yank the foot out and say, "Never mind, just kidding. We're gonna rethink the deployment of this."
I think every company, when they get to a certain size, needs to employ a jester. Someone that is going to stand there and say, hey, it might sound like a great idea, but you're an idiot. Just say it plainly to them and explain why it's a bad idea. Because
Yeah,
it
so
feels
No,
like,
no
you need
ramifications attached to that job whatsoever. They get to
right.
speak their mind.
You need someone who
yes,
can't get fired by an upset CEO.
yes, exactly. That's exactly what it would be for. And it's just like, you're an idiot for making this go this far, and here's why. And yeah,
Just don't get caught in the elevator with the guy that's going to roast you the entire ride up.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I'm sure it was just Microsoft's like, oh man, we haven't been first at innovating anything. Like, well, AI's coming out. Let's just go the next step. And there were no breaks on that.
No.
it honestly reminded me of if I have no mouth and yet I must scream. The AI in that.
Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm just for one, I'm very happy Microsoft is double thinking what they're doing instead of just doing it and double down on
Yeah.
the mistakes. So, but hey, good news is with Atom Firewall, there's less chance of that mistake getting public. So,
This is true. This is true. Just don't open a hole for that one to go out.
yep. And I shouldn't call it Atom Firewall. I'm going to have to break that habit. Apologize.
It's all good, John.
Well, any last thoughts from anybody before we wrap this up?
I just want to thank Stan and Steve for being here and educating and helping us out with everything. It's been great, guys.
Thank you so much for the invite. We were just thrilled to be able to show up. So it was a pleasure, and we've loved working with you guys, and we look forward to continuing a fantastic work relationship with you guys moving forward.
We look forward to it as well.
I'll leave you guys with one Adam related thought that Stan hinted to earlier, the new unofficial slogan that we come up with at InfoSec Europe, because we were sitting outside the patio after the first night setting up, and I looked up at the banners hanging outside the Excel Center in London. And the one that caught my attention said, "The best defense is a good offense," which is a good pitch from a company selling threat intelligence. And I looked at the sign and I'm like, no. So there's a spot right next to it to hang a banner next year that says, "Just block everything." because that is your best defense. Just block everything. It's faster, it's cheaper, and it actually works.
Just block it all.
Just block
I
everything.
love
it. You guys heard it first.
There we go.
All your problems go away.
That's
Thanks,
awesome.
guys. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank
been
you.
amazing.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Cheers, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.